How can businesses bounce back from the pandemic? Well, Phones for You founder John Caudwell joins us to reveal if working from home is really sustainable. He's up after the break. We're back. UK businesses are currently pondering the future of the office as the government looks set to change their work from home guidance next month. But is it too late to save the office and our cities? Well, just yesterday, auditing giant Deloitte told its 20,000 UK employers they can work from home forever. But on the other hand, the boss of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon, has dubbed remote working an aberration that needs to be corrected as soon as possible. Tonight, I'm joined by the business leader, philanthropist and founder of Phones for You, John Caudwell, to discuss how businesses can bounce back post-pandemic. Now, John has set up the Caudwell Pandemic Recovery Program, a 4-step plan to help get Britain financially back on its feet. In particular, John does see room in home working, but generally believes we need to get people back into the office where teams can spark off each other and create a dynamic, lively environment that's all about improvement of the individual and of the business. On top of this, he suggests the government needs to invest around £500 billion in the recovery to save long-term unemployment. John joins me tonight live from Monaco. John, great to have you here. I'm really nervous about the end of the office and the knock-on effect it will have for our cities. And I think I'm also really nervous, John, about this idea that if businesses see that people can work really easily from home, what's to stop those businesses sending the jobs offshore?
Yeah, well, good evening, Dan. And first of all, let me congratulate you on your new position. Good to see you on TV. Yeah, it's a very good point. And I suppose I sort of sit between the two of those speculators on home working. I think there's absolutely a place for home working for certain individuals in certain types of jobs. But equally, there's no replacement for the vibrant office, for that learning and stimulating situation where junior people can learn off the senior people, and there's an atmosphere of excitement and mutual job learning. And if we just work from home, without doubt, there would be a huge amount lost to society. So the answer is work from home for some people in certain roles, but the majority of people need to be back to work without doubt to gain that dynamic atmosphere.
So what do you say to a company like Deloitte, John, that says if you want to work from home, you can work from home forever? I mean, is that a selfish move by Deloitte in terms of the country? You know, because we need those staff in, don't we?
A number of issues on this. First of all, it is down to each company to work out their own policy and practice and decide whether they can get maximum efficiency from an employee being at home or being in the office. And I think that move is inevitable, that we are going to progress more and more towards working from home. The knock-on effects of that, of course, are empty office blocks, town centres with reduced trade, and it's going to be a very, very painful evolution that has been started by this COVID revolution. So I've got many very mixed feelings about it, but you can't really change the pathway that we're on. There will be more working from home. It will have its negative consequences, but if some companies feel that that's the best way of getting maximum productivity out of their employees and their employees like it, then why not?
And there seems to be a battle going on at the moment behind the scenes in government, John, between Whitehall and some ministers. So lots of officials want the work from home guidance to stand, whereas, of course, there's a push by some ministers to say, no, we should be actively encouraging as many people who can to come back into the office, maybe around September time. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, I definitely agree with the latter. You know, providing we've got COVID reasonably under control, and of course we've now seen this flare up with the Delta virus, but as long as we got it reasonably under control, we do need to encourage people back to work, because if we don't do that, there's going to be a lot of employees that don't want to go back to work and employers who want them to. And it's creating a bit of a clash between the two parties. So I think encouraging people back to work is absolutely the right thing, and that let each individual company and their employees negotiate whether it's working from the office or working from home in the future.
Don't you think we're doing a huge disservice to young people, John? Because I could never have learned how to do my job if I wasn't in the office and taking in the greats around me who I worked with in my early days and actually realising, oh yeah, that's how I do things.
Yeah, that's absolutely the right point, Dan, and I agree with you 100%. And that's the point I made, that we need people in the office so that juniors can learn from the more senior people. And there is a great danger that if there's too much working from home, we lose that almost, let's say, an apprenticeship type situation where people can really learn from people who've got vast experience. And they're not going to learn from those people if they're all working from home. So it's definitely not the answer, but that doesn't mean, of course, that there isn't some opportunity in certain companies and certain employees to do the work from home.
Is it inhumane to ask everyone to work from home? And I raise that as a serious point because if you're a young person in London or Manchester or Birmingham in a small shared flat, and I think back to the sorts of flats that I used to live in, right? And it was pretty difficult to even sleep there, let alone work there as well. And yet we're asking people to spend 8 hours a day without proper equipment, without proper technology, using their home Wi-Fi services. I mean, are companies actually allowed morally to ask people to do this? And the reason I'm particularly talking about young people is I think young people really suffer most in this situation. But so do parents, for example, who are having to balance their kids being at home with work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Once again, I mean, that's the difficulty, that we absolutely, without doubt, should not be encouraging people to work from home. We should be encouraging them to work from the office. But as I've continually said, in some cases, working from home is absolutely fine. But it shouldn't be the central culture of any organisation. For all the reasons we've just talked about.
No, indeed. But should companies have a duty, John, to, for example, provide people who are working from home the correct equipment? A comfortable chair, a computer, because I've heard about lots of big companies who are saying to staff, no, you're going to have to keep working from home. We're not giving you anything. We're not providing you any money to get set up properly from home.
Yeah, and that is another problem. What happens when the dog's barking? The dog needs walking. The kids come home from school. Somebody wants dinner cooking. There's so many distractions from the home. So unless you're lucky enough to have a phenomenal setup with an office and proper infrastructure, then it can never be as effective as working from the office, where you've got not only the lack of distraction, but any distraction there is a positive distraction in terms of job skill creation, rather than something completely irrelevant to the job and to the workplace.
How are businesses that rely on commuter traffic going to survive, John, if we keep up this way? Even if 50% of people go back to the office, how do those businesses survive? Because right now, many of our big cities, and I speak to businesses again in Birmingham and Manchester and London, and they are ghost towns still.
Yeah, people don't realise the crisis that's coming, Dan, because the empty office space and the empty retail space as a result of retailers going down is going to reduce rental income and rental yield. And that rental yield in many, many cases is the rental yield that provides the pension funds with their income in the future and provides people's future pensions. So this has and is causing a real revolution, and it hasn't shown up yet because these rental incomes have not really been reduced properly. But we've all seen now the empty shop premises in the high street. We know there's going to be empty office space, and the combination of those two problems are, in the medium term, going to create a real crisis in yields and a real crisis for the pension funds.
And that's why you say the government needs to throw £500 billion at this problem?
Well, it's a wee bit more complicated than that, but what we need to do is create jobs. And what the government have been very good at doing is, in the majority of instances, throwing a lot of money at private individuals. And there's multiple problems with that. They've looked after people with their 80% furlough, and they should have looked after those people, but maybe not to the tune of 80%, because most of those people now are better off as a result of the lack of holidays and lack of restaurant meals, etc., etc. They're better off, and that is going to come back to the marketplace. It's going to cause a mini boom, and that in some respects is positive because it will enable some businesses to bounce back. But on the other hand, it's putting money into the economy short term, and when that money runs out, I'm quite fearful that in 6 to 12 months' time, that we then feel the real brunt of this situation with a lot of unemployment and all of this excess money being used up.
Yep.
And bearing in mind what we're doing is using excess money up to stimulate the economy, that is not creating new jobs, and that has gone onto the government balance sheet. So under Caudwell Pandemic Recovery, I wanted the government to borrow a lot of money to invest in the future, to invest in every project that could create real GDP growth and real jobs for people, and do that through apprenticeship schemes, massive and wonderful apprenticeship schemes like the one I went on with Michelin Tire Company, which gave me an amazing basis for a future, to invest in an inward investment into the UK to create more jobs, to invest in an energy city that it takes everything into account for the environment and tries to build Britain into a world-class supplier of all environmentally friendly methodologies, right the way through from renewable energy to the problem of plastics. And finally, investing in the infrastructure. Now, if we'd have borrowed the money to invest in those things that produces growth for the future, produces real income for people, real jobs, that would be a great job done. But unfortunately, most of the money that we've borrowed has been found its way into individual pockets, and unfortunately, not into the pockets of 3.8 million excluded people. So this sort of rich-poor divide...
Yeah.
Go on,
yeah, I completely agree, John. And what you're...
We've got a time lag, haven't we? But this rich-poor divide is actually not just amongst people like me and the billionaires and the ordinary man in the street. There's now a rich-poor divide on a lower scale between just ordinary working people, where some people have been magnificently looked after and a lot of people have been poorly looked after. And that's dividing society even more.
It is, and a lot of what you're talking about shows the real cost of lockdown, which a lot of people haven't thought about yet, because it's going to change our lives and our economy for years and years to come. John Caudwell, absolutely fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for being here.